welcome to No Broken Legs. The NFL season has ended, the Cleveland Browns are out of the playoffs, and to break all of this down, I am your host, Evan Belfiore, and joining me after making the drive up from Ravenna to Lakewood, thank you, sir, Jimmy Champ. How are you tonight?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. There was, of course, a stupid accident right around 271 there around Northfield coming under the bridge, so that was fun to get to drive through this evening, but I'm glad to be here. This is something to definitely discuss in person and try to break down this season. The Browns, see what they had and what they didn't have.
Yeah, and what they had was 7 wins after an 8-win season when they had the quarterback they ran out of town. And that's not a good look. I know Deshaun Watson was suspended for 11 games, but they got decent quarterback play, or so everybody tells me about Jacoby Brissett. We had our criticisms. We think he left a lot of plays on the field and made a lot of big mistakes. But at the end of the day, the Browns are 7-10. They were minus 20 on the season for net points. 4-4 at home, 3-6 on the road, 3-3 in the division. Just 3-2 non-conference, but man, 4-8 in conference, and they really got to kick themselves for particularly the Jets game.
The Jets game. I think the Falcons game as well. I think not kicking the field goal early in the season on the road and then letting the Falcons break you with that drive that they had. I think the Falcons game, I think that was a bad game. And then when they played the AFC East, they did not look very good.
No, they didn't. The Patriots ate their lunch again, just like they did last year.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw Stephon Diggs run wide open across the back of the end zone in the Bills game. Like
after they called a fucking timeout.
There it is. Those games really bothered me, but here's a number that bothers me. 6.9. 6.9 was our yards per completion on the season. The Browns were bottom third in every passing statistical category. For a team that says, like, with their analytics, they need to throw the ball, Nick Chubb averaged 5.1 yards a carry. So they only outthrew Nick Chubb per completion by 1.8 yards. And that's insane. Like, that can't be a number. Not when you could have given Nick Chubb 50 more carries and he could have led the league in rushing yards. Like, he absolutely would have caught Josh Jacobs if he had them on carries that Derrick Henry had, or even in between the carries Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry have. It was definitely the brightest spot on the offense. Amari Cooper at times surprised me, at times he didn't. But the passing game was so bad and the running game was so good in spots. When they tried to stick with it, it looked so good all year long. But we had to go away from it so we could complete 6.9 yards completion.
So I want to rant about the running backs, but let's start at the top. At the tippy top of the Browns organization is Jimmy and D. Haslam. They came out publicly and said they didn't know what they were doing for like all the years they've owned this franchise. And I don't think anything's changed since they made those comments. What are your thoughts on the Haslems, Jimmy, as owners of the Browns?
I think over and over again they've showed they don't know what they're doing. I think you've course corrected is really what I think has happened with the regime. Is with the exception of Hugh Jackson, with the exception of Hugh Jackson and Freddie Kitchens, I really loved every other coach on the staff for a handful of years before, obviously, the Hugh seasons and we have to blow everything up. But I think there was so much turmoil and so much fighting. Like, they didn't want a Greg Williams, Todd Haley situation again. So you hired a bunch of people who have the exact same opinion on offense, on scheme and strategy. And the Haslems are happy with that because they come to work every day and it's happy. And everybody tells them how smart they were to hire Kevin Stefanski. And everybody tells them how ruthless they were going and getting Deshaun Watson. And I think they like hearing that as opposed to, look at those fucking guys over there who don't have a clue what they're doing. So that's what I think about the Haslems.
Well, after a whole bunch of seasons that were really bad after 2007, I'm not going to read the numbers because they're all less than 5. They're not all less than 5. I think there's a 7 or 2 in there. And then Baker's first year, you win 7 games. His second year, a lot of turmoil, still won 7 games. 11 wins the next year, you win a playoff game. Helps that it's in Pittsburgh, and he looked good in that game. 250, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And then like the whole thing just fell apart, and all of the we talk about Baker's maturity a lot, but we don't talk about the situation that the team was putting him in enough, because there was a lack of maturity from the Browns front office, and that's, hey, no fucking surprise. That's what it always is. But after all this, they get 7 wins again this year, which is basically like 6.5-ish. I think the Cleveland Browns are now just, they're not a horrifically bad team. They're just a bad to mediocre team now. And that's actually elevation. That's better.
It's better, but I think what scares me is I think if Deshaun Watson gets a little bit better, I think they'll be mediocre to right on the fringe. They'll always be in the hunt graphic, if that makes sense. I think they'll always be right there for Deshaun Watson's tenure, and I think because they're in the hunt, no other changes will be made, and this regime will just keep rolling. Like
the Bengals with Dalton for all those years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I like, that can't be what happens over the next 4 years. Like, if over the next 4 years they don't get past the second round of the playoffs, and that's a strong possibility. Like, the AFC is just loaded. Like, if you don't, like, everybody has to play the first week except whoever gets the bye, and that bye probably isn't coming out of the AFC North. Like, the teams are just too good.
Not only, I mean, it's crazy, the conference and the division is just so tough. Like, we want to believe if this had gone right and this had gone right, that the Browns could have gone to the playoffs this year. But if you look at the playoff teams, the Jaguars are possibly the only team I would say the Browns have a better roster, but I think Trevor Lawrence is farther on the come up than Deshaun Watson is, so I still might take the Jaguars. So I they went 3-7 against playoff teams, and Tampa Bay's offense had an absolute meltdown in that game to get them that win. Like, so those are your only playoff wins, are one with the Ravens, one with the Bengals, and then winning that game. And that doesn't say, well, this is a team that was a bounce away or one Jacoby Brissett play away from the playoffs. I think it's a lot farther away from that. And I think there's so much work to be done with the roster that, I mean, I think right now the Browns are that bottom middle of the AFC.
Yeah.
And what scares me is...
they've never been better than third since they came back, I think.
And what scares me is that's, like, acceptable for the Haslems. Like, that scares me.
Well, I mean, I guess I can't kill them for that mindset. I said over the offseason that I would just ride out this season with Baker and either take a defensive tackle or wide receiver with your first-round pick, and then just go from there. I don't know. I mean, Jordan Davis would probably make that Browns defense look a hell of a lot better.
You think Jordan Davis would make it look better than Jadeveon Clowney? You think? I think, right? Yeah.
I mean, he missed a quarter of the season again. He only wants to play third downs, Jimmy. I only play third downs now.
Yeah, I can't believe a coaching staff wouldn't believe in you if that's your mindset coming into a game and into a season.
So we both don't like the owners. That's not changing. There's nothing that can happen with that. One position that's been talked about a lot more recently is John DePodesta and what exactly he does. And he was not at the end of season press conference. Jimmy, did you find that odd? If you were the owner, would you have had him at that press conference? Why would you have done either?
No, if I was in their situation, I would have kept him out of it too. With all the reports of everything of what it seems like the house might look like inside for the Cleveland Browns organization, I think they need to keep DePodesta away from questions, because the last thing you want is for everybody to know just how much on fire the inside of the house is. Like, we all think there's a fire, but a couple sound bites from DePodesta might put it there. And I don't think you want that. Like, I don't think there's any way it could be a positive experience for DePodesta to be in a presser or a media event right now, because it's not going to there's nothing he can say to make anything better. Anything. Because you're either sabotaging Kevin Stefanski or you're handcuffing Kevin Stefanski, apparently.
I have some questions, Jimmy, that I want to throw at you.
Oh, Lord.
So we talked about how John DePodesta is using their algorithms to come up with game plans and narrow play calls for the offense. How do we know he's not also doing that for the defense?
We don't. And it wouldn't be a surprise, right? It would make perfect sense. Maybe.
Follow up. They don't value 4-yard runs for their offense. So does it not stand to reason that they would worry about stopping 4-yard runs defensively just as much?
Yes. But the problem with that is the Browns' run defense was one of the worst in the league. They tied for giving up the third most rushing touchdowns. Like, the rush defense was atrocious.
What are the two positions that this front office says are the least important if you're going to win football games in the modern NFL?
Defensive tackle and linebacker.
Defensive tackle and linebacker. Interesting. So I'm going to just throw a team at you from another sport. The James Harden Houston Rockets. Remember, everybody was like, no, man. If you're shooting anything, the numbers guys said if you shoot anything besides a 3 or a layup, like that's a bad shot. So they just like go look at their shot charts, man. They're fucking wild. There's like the whole range where Jordan and Kobe lived. There's just nothing. Like even like 10 to 15 footers aren't even in there. Like Kareem hook shots, like they weren't even taking anything like that. They set their entire system up to only play the highest odds. Well, again, the real world doesn't really work that way. And the Browns seem that they have built their roster in that way, and they have schemed that way. Just like the Harden Rockets, they have a fatal flaw. And when they play good teams, that fatal flaw is too much to overcome.
Yeah, and as we talked about over and over again, they never even tried to schematically make it better. Like,
was Woods allowed to do that?
Right. No, I agree with you. It wouldn't be a surprise.
Like, I don't know. Is that why we apparently only get to see Garrett and Clowney next to each other sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it's something. Like, there has to be a problem. And if DePodesta is as deep into the game planning and the execution on game day as it now seems he is, then it would stand to reason that Woods was in the same position as Stefanski. That this is the defense you're going to run. This is what you're going to do. And maybe that's why nobody ever knew where anyone was supposed to be, because they could look at what was in front of them and know what they were doing was wrong and not have enough audibles to fix it.
I should just be clear. I don't have any sources or anything on any of this. This is all just like the DePodesta thing, and him being involved on the defense just seems like an obvious question considering what has been reported about him on the offense.
Right, which is why he isn't going to be at any pressers or media events.
So let's get to the coaching staff. Joe Woods, no longer the defensive coordinator. So I think we're just going to do what we did last year, just take all of the takes about how it was all Baker's fault, and we'll be better this year with a new guy in that position, and just like erase those and put Joe Woods and whoever his replacement is. That's how I think this plays out. Mike Prefer seems to still be on the team. Do you think he survives the next few weeks?
It seems like it. I think if you were going to do it, you would do it now.
Oh, I just had a thought. Do you think they're keeping him on just until they get a new defensive coordinator, and if the defensive coordinator has a guy, they'll kick Prefer to bring in?
Yeah, it's very possible. It is very, especially because if you're able to land one of these coveted guys like a D'Amico Ryans or Gerard Mayo, like if you're able to land one of these guys, they're probably going to want some things. And if it's two of the smartest modern linebackers that I've seen play, like in the last 10 to 15 years, if they tell me, hey man, I got this guy who'd be a great special teams coach, he can't possibly be worse than Prefer. So I would make that happen too. Evan. Oh no, Evan, don't do this to him.
Andrew Berry. Is he somebody that knows how to build a roster and draft talent?
No.
Because I'm looking at the names on this draft list, and I'm seriously not going to sit here and read them all, but there's a lot of misses. And there's a lot of guys that we're going to talk about when we talk about the units, which, think about this for a moment. Do you want to do offense or defense first? Don't answer. We'll tease that here in a second.
I think we might think differently about some of these guys from last year's draft, though.
Newsome regressed. Definitely. JOK. Well, we're not going to get there yet. Just, there's not a lot of guys on these draft picks.
Grant Delpit had a good season. Grant Delpit had the best season of his career.
So did DPJ.
So kudos to both of them.
But where are the guys that you say he's a Pro Bowler? I'll take your silence as a there isn't one, because there isn't one.
Hold on, I'm still looking here.
There's just Barry shows that he can maybe hit on some mid and late round picks, but we haven't seen him do that any better than anybody else. And again, if they're not going to think defensive tackles and linebacker are important after what their eyes showed them this season, then I don't know. I don't know what happens. I mean, I guess it's all pretty obvious. If they're shitty next year, then everybody's just fucking gone.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think DePodesta would survive? Do you think they'd stick with him?
Yes.
Oh man,
yes. I think the Haslems are 100% tied to DePodesta. I don't, because they don't know what they're doing, so they're not sure how many people they'd have to hire because they don't actually know what DePodesta does. So the thought of actually having to figure that out and replace that production within their company, I don't think they want anything to do with that.
He's just pulling the Holmgren. He's just like sitting back and going, well, this is shitty. I'm just not going to talk to anybody and I'm just going to hide. But he saw what happens when you're upfront about it. And so he's hiding. That's, I don't know, man. That's just, I posted that soundbite from Daryl Ryder, the local Cleveland beat reporter, who I'm paraphrasing here, but he laid out that DePodesta is their chief strategy officer who's in charge of coming up with strategies to win football games for a team that doesn't win football games. Yeah, exactly. And he's no accountability. And I think that's really the next step in our journey down this ladder of the Cleveland Browns organization. Is there is no consistency in the accountability for really anybody. That's the part that's crazy, is that accountability piece. But I just feel like they're completely tied to DePodesta. Now, we talked about here when we were doing our season preview for last year, we talked about how we thought Kevin Stefanski would take a step back because it's actually football again. There's everybody everywhere all the time. There's no quiet. It's all noise. And we said we thought that was going to be a bit of a problem. Now it's starting to look like Kevin Stefanski feels this need to prove something about his play calling. I'm guessing it's wants to show he's Kyle Shanahan, would be my guess. And I think it's just really affecting the head coach. Like, I believe that Kevin Stefanski is a really smart guy. I believe if Kevin Stefanski was paying attention and knew that his special teams coach told his holder to move up 5 yards to make the field goal closer so it could get blocked, I believe Kevin Stefanski would have said, no, that's a terrible, terrible idea. Don't do that. Like, I believe if he was paying attention, a lot of things would happen. Do you think he knew that Atlanta ran the ball like 21 times in a row during the game? There's no way he knew. No. There's no way, because I think he's a really smart guy, and if he was paying attention, instead of having his face in a play sheet, he would have said, put 11 people in the box and stop the run. I mean, he would have had plenty of time with all those runs to figure out what play he was going to call. So I don't know what he was like. He could have called a dozen plays ahead. So I think Jacoby Brissett was not as good as he was hoping he would be. And now we're just giving Jacoby Brissett the credit, saying he probably played better than expected. He did a good job. He didn't actually do that good of a job, but he did a serviceable job.
And then things with Deshaun didn't go great because there were a lot of wide open, well, maybe not wide open, but a lot of guys running open where Deshaun Watson's throwing balls at their feet. And I think Kevin Stefanski is frustrated as a play caller because I think he knows that what he knows should work, but he's not doing it. Because last year he tried the I know what you know, what I know what you know.
He's confidently incorrect.
Yeah, like last year he tried that cat and mouse stuff and it didn't work. So he's trying something different this year, and it's not working. And I think the play caller is sabotaging the coach.
I get both sides for it. I've been pretty consistent saying that I think he needs better control over his team, and that's why he should be handing over play calling to Van Pelt, because they're an undisciplined team. They make a lot of dumb penalties. They do a lot of dumb shit. Just to finish up, to quickly talk about accountability again. And especially with Stefanski, Garrett was suspended for a drive the one game for some unknown reason that didn't need to be made public. They could have just had him pay a fine. Nobody would have noticed. We could all move on our way. Instead, it was a big story for a week. Delpit gets suspended for a play? Like, this Bush League shit, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, these are adults. Like, that's how you treat like 5-year-olds. Like these are adults getting paid tens of millions of dollars in some cases. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, it seemed so strange during the year. I don't know. Maybe Joe Woods wasn't in step with everybody else, and that's why the defense was so out of whack and out of sorts. I don't know. I mean, but these like we're gonna bench Miles for a series, but it's gonna be really impactful because it's the starting series, like things like that. Like it just doesn't make any sense. The whole thing, like it doesn't make sense. But I don't think it's going anywhere.
No, I don't think it is either. What do you want to do, offense or defense first?
Defense.
Okay. Well, they're going to get a new defensive coordinator. They've reached out to some names already. And some names that we think they should. Jared Mayo, Brian Flores, who we are both big proponents of as I would look at him as a head coach, honestly. I think he did a really good job in Miami. That defense regressed this year without him. I think that's pretty straightforward. So if that's somebody that would agree to come to the Browns after seeing what a good organization looks like in Pittsburgh, I'd be surprised. I mean, he already put up with all that shit in Miami. I can't imagine he wants to deal with Haslam.
Depends what kind of conversation he has with D. Podesta and Barry without Kevin Stefanski in the room. Because we know as a group they'll go behind their quarterback's back. So there's no reason the two of them wouldn't go behind Stefanski's back and say, Brian, listen, it's either going to be a great year and you're going to do a great job as defensive coordinator, or if the year gets really bad, really quick, you'll have a chance to get promoted.
Yeah, or if
make sure you make
6.
friends, become friends with Alex Van Pelt, so you're good with him running your offense and actually coach this team.
Yeah, if we're 2-6, you're going to get to take us home.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely see that conversation happening. It might even happen with Gerard Mayo too. To be totally honest with you, it might happen with either one of them.
Maybe. So, let's just start with we've already talked about the front 7. Let's start with the front 4. Is there anybody that you really think they need to keep? I mean, Clowney's going to be gone. I would bring in 2 defensive tackles. I don't think either one of them that they have currently is if you're going to be a contending team, I don't think you can have that weak of a pair. Maybe you can get away with those guys as your 2 backups if you get just a fucking monster to play the middle of the defensive line there. But I mean, they're gonna value a pass rusher ahead of that, so they're gonna have to find a pass rusher to replace Clowney, and they're gonna have to fix their defensive tackle position. That's a problem, Jimmy.
Well, but I mean, so let's face it. So everyone from last year's draft that is physically able to play is going to be on the roster for their whole rookie contract because they don't have the money, they don't have the draft picks to replace everybody. Like if you're under contract, I don't think you're getting cut. Like I think these guys,
if you have a minimum salary, you're not getting cut.
Yeah, I think these guys are going to be expected to improve, I agree with you. They can't be the two starters. Like, that can't be what you do. You've got to either draft somebody or find somebody. I don't know. And it's going to be weird what you've already talked about. It appears to the outside it's still a circus. So what free agents are going to go in there? Are there more people out there like Clowney who said, man, I want to play with Watson? But if you want to play with Watson, why'd you only play with Watson for 6 games? Like, I don't know. But are there some free agents out there that will value playing with Deshaun Watson over the circus? And I don't know what that answer is.
They got to fix the defensive tackles. They got to at least get one guy in there that commands a double team, because they don't have the talent at the linebacking level. Man, there was a big drop-off after Walker got hurt, and we're not big fans of Walker, so that's another problem, man.
Yeah, we're not huge fans of Walker, but it was clearly missed. You need a healthy Walker. You need a healthy JOK playing in the box. And maybe Deion Jones. I mean, he popped a little bit there at the end of the season.
You think they hold on to him? He probably played his way into a contract.
So. I hope so. Like, he was playing in a game where a lot of Browns weren't showing any passion. He was hustling. He was fighting. He was playing hard. He's a dog. So I hope they hold on to him.
Yeah, he's probably somebody they could probably get on a deal. So there's a good chance he might be back. But I don't know. Was he good enough? I mean, JOK, he's small, so injuries are a concern. He seems to kind of come and go. Maybe it took Simmons a few years down in Arizona to really figure out the position that he's playing in the pros. So, I mean, obviously he's going to be one of your starters next year. I don't have any qualms with that. I think he should be one of those starters. Taki looked all right at times. I still think that if he's going to be your starter and you want to be in the playoffs, you've got to get more help around him.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Well, I think it probably makes a bigger problem than we have now. I wouldn't surprise me if the new defensive coordinator comes in and goes 3-4.
Oh my God, Jimmy!
Like,
I can't do this again.
I know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I just fucking can't do this again. 3-4, 4-3. Jesus Christ, we're just playing the hits again. We're just playing the hits.
Yeah, no, 100%.
We were talking. People on fucking local talking heads are talking about what you just talked about with Brian Flores if he's brought in. Like, do you hire a defensive coordinator so that you have a backup in case Stefanski shits the bed to start the season? Because that's very much in play.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
They're going to, like, there's a real possibility, like you said, they just won't address defensive tackle. And I think if you just get a monster of a defensive tackle, I think it solves a lot of their front seven problems.
Oh, I agree. I 100% agree. Like,
I just don't know who that guy is or where you're finding it.
Yeah, but you've got to try. Like, it was something I talked about. Like, I really praised the Bengals in this past year's draft and free agency because they took every offensive lineman they could get their hands on. And they said, hey, we're going to get as many of these guys in the building as we can. We're going to coach them up. We're going to see who stands out, and we're going to figure this out. Like, we're not going to have linemen next year because we didn't try. And I feel like the Browns, like, they need to swing and miss for the interior of the defense.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to know how good that secondary is until there's a competent level in front of them.
I would like to see them pair, what are they going to get, like a third round compensatory pick for Hunt? Like, trade that and your second pick to move up and get a defensive tackle. Just make that a concern. But here's the problem. There's positions I think they're going to be valuing higher on offense, which we'll get to here in a second, and that worries me. But they also have additional problems on the defense because while the secondary was supposed to be a strength, man, Johnson will not be back after, he basically parodied the Spider-Man pointing gif for most of the season.
Yay.
Man, he really disappointed here. Really he was supposed to be a stabilizing force on that defense, and it just never happened.
No, for whatever reason. And maybe it was the culture shock change. Maybe it was the weather change. I don't know what it was, but this wasn't the same guy we saw play for the Rams.
his former teammate on 2 occasions, Troy Hill, went back to LA and did not have very kind things to say about how the organization here was run.
Shocker.
Yeah, people saying bad things about the Browns organization. Who knew? I don't dislike Grant Delpit, but that kid just doesn't seem to have any instincts in pass coverage. And I know as I say this, he just had a game recently where he had a nice pick, but that was of Carson Wentz. So you can get in line with everybody else who Carson Wentz has thrown interceptions to. I just, safety's a real problem for them. Again, maybe Delpit looks better if you find a really good free safety back there that can really help coordinate your coverages.
Yeah, I think that Delpit has the skills to be really good. I think he just needs some help on that strategy side of the game. Now, he did lead the team with 105 tackles and 4 interceptions. He also broke up 10 passes. So when he was in the right place, he made the play. But we just saw too many times where he didn't see it before it happened, like really good safeties do, where they are already floating to where the ball comes through the hole or where the ball comes out, because they've got that kind of next level, the mental game of it, and he's got to get there, and he needs help getting there, because there's right now it doesn't appear to be anybody to do that, which hopefully maybe that comes from the new defensive coordinator.
Maybe. Greedy Williams, unlikely to be back unless, he just took the minimum, which I still think they'd probably just take a flyer on somebody in the 5th or 6th round instead of bringing him back. Looks like they might have something in Emerson as a 2nd or 3rd cornerback. He played really well this season.
Yeah.
Newsome regressed. We mentioned it earlier. That's a little scary considering, Denzel Ward, man, he's just not elite. I see him get beat too frequently by wide receiver 2s in single coverage, let alone games where he just seems to really shut somebody down. And he can't. That can't happen for guys that we say are elite. Now, as part of that, the pass rush doesn't seem to get home, because that's something that seems to happen a lot. What are you seeing out there, Jimmy? Do you think they're holding up in coverage and they're just being asked to hold too long? Or are there just, besides the breakdowns, are they just not where they're supposed to be?
Yes and yes. I think both things are true.
As often with the Browns, is it this set of problems or this set of problems? No, it's all of them.
Like, Denzel was asked to cover some really good wide receivers in the league this year. He did not have the best success at it.
No.
But there were also times where for halves he shut guys down. But they're being asked to do too much, all of them. But my biggest problem with Denzel is the multiple times this year where he appeared to have no interest in being on the football field. And does Newsome's regression, do both of those things stem from John Johnson?
Is it an effort thing?
Is it, dude, this is how our leader in our group plays?
Man, that would be bad. Well, Johnson was, especially after Walker went down, the leader of that defense. So I also, just in general, we didn't really talk about leadership, but they don't really have, their stars aren't leaders. They're not vocal. They're not vocal leaders.
No, so I'm going to be that guy for a minute. All right, listen.
Be that guy.
Denzel Ward, it's a crappy position to be put in, but you were probably overdrafted. You have shined at times and you have failed at times. But you're a cornerback for the Cleveland Browns. Let me tell you something, brother. No matter if you were out of the playoffs, in a game to keep the Steelers from going to the playoffs, Minifield and Dixon would have ripped somebody's head off. The effort that Denzel Ward gave early in that game was inexcusable. And if Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, was paying attention, he would have been in Denzel's ass on the sideline.
But that's not the kind of guy Stefanski is either. Nobody on this team that seems to be up. Jarvis and Baker are the 2 most recent examples of good players that performed on the field and were vocal leaders. Whether you like them or not, they right. At least tried and did that.
Yeah, but like, you don't have to be like a screamer, but you still see
Dog.
guys.
It's dog. That's what we're really talking about. They got that dog in them.
Yeah, like that Kyle Shanahan or Matt LaFleur, like, I'm not going to yell, but you're going to understand that I am pissed at you.
Well, that kind of goes back to accountability. Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of repercussions for failure.
No, just keep doing it. It's fine.
It shouldn't, like, just to get back to just have JOK blitz behind Garrett and Clowney. Like, you can't, like, they don't seem to ever do it, and they do it like 6 times a year, and they get like big plays 4 of those 6 times. Shouldn't that be like, it's like they don't want to do it more because they worried it'll be less successful.
With the talent of Myles Garrett and JOK, it would never be not successful. That is always going to force the offensive line, a running back or a quarterback, into a hurried situation because one of them is getting through that line.
Jimmy, what do you think the chances are that they take a cornerback in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round with their picks there?
If Greedy's not on the team, then they'll draft a cornerback. I think through the analytics, it's one of the most valued positions. So if Greedy's not in the building, I do think Emerson has a spot. He's played well, but I still think you're going to draft a cornerback.
Well, the thing that is most important, according to the numbers, is the deep passing game. And cornerbacks, if you get good cornerbacks, they will stop the deep passing game. And to flip it over to the offensive side of the ball, I think they're going to draft a wide receiver with their 2nd pick, Jimmy. I think they're just, and they may even trade up in the 2nd round to try to go get somebody, because if they want a deep passing game, they have to get a deep passing threat.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Like, schematically, possibly even from a pass blocking situation, but schematically and for the roster, you're not built for what Deshaun Watson does best. Like, you're just not. You don't have that Brandon Cooks guy who can.
Well, it's supposed to be Anthony Schwartz, who's just,
yeah, but he's just
not good.
He's just not.
Yeah, he's just not good.
And Bell and Woods, I think they both played well in their limited time, but neither one of them is that burner either. Like, they gotta have take the top off to get that safety back so Watson can see the field a little better and find the open guys, because he doesn't trust what he's seeing right now. They got to get some safeties off the line.
No, and I know Cooper played well this year, but he's more of a mid-tier wide receiver one. He's making elite money, but I don't think he's elite. I think DPJ had a really good year. I think he was better than I expected him to be. You've been a fan of DPJ for a long time, so congratulations on that.
Yeah, he appears to have all the talent in the world, and now misused in college and the pros, right? But no, he's coming on, and that's good. I think he is one of the, like, he can be in a 3 wide receiver set to start the season. Like, whether you want him in the slot or you want him wide, either way, he's getting pretty good at doing both. So I think you start with that 3 wide receiver set and see where you go from there with whoever it is you draft.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be somebody like Schwartz. Like, they took Schwartz, they took Bell. They're not worried about getting a big, tall guy. Mm-hmm. They're fine. They need to find a burner. Well, Cooks is available, and I don't think he's going to get a whole lot of attention on the free agent market. Or I don't know if he's actually available. He wants to be traded or released.
Yeah, I don't know. But, Brandon Cooks would be a welcome addition, but it has to be that kind of wide receiver. And I agree with you. They're not really looking for the tall, lanky wide receiver. They're just looking for the guy they can get to get the top off of the defense, which is fine. And I'm fine with that. Whatever it takes, because that's what the offense is lacking. I think Watson can make that underneath game really work, but you can tell he's not sure if everybody's where they're supposed to be, because he's always played in an offense with Brandon Cooks.
The next unit I want to talk about is the offensive line. I like the interior. They'll figure out their center position. They actually have some options there, which is good. The guards play really good football. It's the tackles I'm worried about, Jimmy. I know they just re-signed Conklin, and when he's been on the field, he's generally been good, but he's getting older. He's been injured quite a bit the last few years, and what do you think the odds are that Wills is back in a Browns uniform next year?
Oh, I think he'll be back. I think they think he's done a better job than he has.
No.
You don't think?
I
You don't think?
he just when the Browns were really bad, I used to say you can tell how bad the Browns are by the games being within a score, third, maybe early fourth quarter. And then the other team would get the ball, and all of a sudden their offense would look completely different because you could tell they opened up the playbook and said, oh, okay, we actually have to score on this drive. It's the Browns. Okay, all right, kick it into gear, boys. Kick it into gear. The Browns still run into that just a lot less frequently, and it's not drives now. It tends to be plays. And in those big plays, they fold. Or I shouldn't say they fold. They don't fold all the time. They actually get some of these plays now. They never used to get any of them. But Wills doesn't seem to hold up on a majority of those plays. And I think that is a fundamental flaw that this team needs to address going into the next year. Unless Wills has just been hurt all the time, in which case then he's playing hurt all the time, so it doesn't matter how good he is when he's healthy.
Oh, they would never let a first-round draft pick play injured. They would never do such a thing, bud. No.
Or do it to the same guy last year when he couldn't finish a game, and then they gave him like a week or two off. He came back and looked a lot better.
Yeah, no, I think they're happy with Wills' performance personally because he doesn't give up that many sacks. The problem with Wills is when he has a hole open and just forgets he's supposed to continue blocking, and like there's no hustle. That a lot of times, I won't say never, but there's a lot of plays, almost like one a series, where you will see Wills put in zero effort.
Well, he had a pretty significant ankle injury last year. He's been dealing. They said he's been pretty beat up this year. Is that just a product of your pain tolerance, and your pain tolerance is better at some points than it is others, even within a game?
Yeah,
I mean, if that's it, then my concern would be how good can you expect him to be unless it's something that you're absolutely sure he can completely heal over the offseason.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm sure they're hoping Wills comes back a little bit healthier and a little bit more ready to play next year. I would still draft a left tackle, or maybe the best tackle on the board, because Conklin just keeps getting injured. So I think you probably need another. And I know they're so limited on draft picks.
The one thing they seem to be able to do is take late round and undrafted tackle, or take late round and undrafted offensive linemen and turn them into viable players, at least for a few games.
Yeah, that part seems true. So hopefully, I think that motto sticks up. But now I'm saying. So now we've said, take the best possible defensive tackle. If Greedy leaves, you got to draft a cornerback. You still need a wide receiver. And now I'm also asking for an offensive tackle. I don't even think they have that many draft picks this year. So it's just, Andrew Berry has some serious work to do.
And again,
he has a lot of work to do, man.
I've been saying it for a few years now. I'm going to keep saying it. This team has no depth because they strip the roster bare, man. They don't have guys that have been professionals. Just professionals. Like, those guys 25 to 53 matter. Like, they really fucking matter.
Oh, I agree. I 100% agree. But I don't know how well DePodesta's analytics measures them.
Well, he would think that guys that only play 10 to 15% of the time should be minimum level players, minimum paid players.
Well, I guess that answers that question.
And, I'm glad we said some bad stuff about the front office, because I did compliment them on the offensive tackle thing. And now when it's in character when I talk about the running backs, because they don't value 4-yard runs, Jimmy, but they have used mid to late round picks on running backs the last 2 years, even though they had holes elsewhere, even though they had Chubb, who he's top 5 back in the league. Maybe top 3,
Tie-
maybe the best. I mean,
Well,
I'm listening.
there-
I'm listening to arguments that
yeah,
he's the best back in the league.
Yeah, there's some premier running backs in the league right now, and Nick Chubb probably belongs 1 through 5 somewhere on that scale. And there are some elite running backs in the NFL right now.
Oh,
but
yeah.
but I believe Nick Chubb is one of the 5 best.
Yeah, I've definitely. It's tough to put him ahead of Christian McCaffrey, seeing how effective he is both catching and running. But hey, who knew? This last game we got to see Chubb catch some passes, and it fucking works. Putting the ball in the hands of your best guys, Jimmy.
It's crazy. So this is like one of the stats that frustrates me the most. So Nick Chubb finished 3rd in rushing yards behind Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. They both had 3 more carries per game than Nick Chubb did. They both had about 50 more carries on the year, roughly, a little under, more carries on the year than Nick Chubb did. And Nick Chubb out-averaged them by almost a yard. They were 4.4 and 4.7, and Chubb was 5.1, 5.2.
Yeah, he was 5.1.
So to understand that if he just gets the same amount of carries, that Nick Chubb leads the league in rushing by 200 yards. If you work out that math, if everybody wants to work out that math, I promise I did it. It's about 200 and 250 yards he would win by. So, but here's the part that frustrates me. The Cleveland Browns averaged running the ball 31 times a game. Only 17 of those runs went to Nick Chubb. And that's, to me, that's it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I know people love Kareem, but I think Kareem is better suited for that 3 to 5 play a game where you really utilize what he does best. But you figure you also had 3 or 4 Jacoby Brissett sneaks every game. Don't do that. Give Nick Chubb the ball.
Well, he's not even on the field for the biggest plays of the game.
It's absolutely ununderstood. I don't understand it.
Do you remember how much when we first started doing this podcast was during or after the Freddie Kitchens season? Right after
we started that
season, and I was ripping my fucking hair out when. Hey, the Browns are inside the 5-yard line. Are they giving the ball to Nick Chubb, their star running back? Nope. Are we running something for OBJ, our athletically gifted wide receiver who was still really good?
No.
How about Jarvis Landry? That guy's really good. He seems to make a lot of tough catches. We give him a chance?
No, we ain't gonna do that either.
What about our super athletic tight end Njoku, whose specialty is supposed to be the red zone?
No.
Oh, 3rd tight end?
Got it.
This just reeks of that. It reeks of that. If you had, remember when all the computer ranking systems were just coming up? Hollinger's was, I think, the first one, the PER metric. And all the basketball guys had a saying, because everybody was coming up with their own, model that said how good players were. And everybody said, look, if it doesn't say LeBron James is the best player, your model's broken. Well, add another rule to that. If your algorithm tells you to not have your best players on the field in the biggest moments of the game, your algorithm is not good. It's not a good algorithm. It has fundamental problems. It has flaws that just cannot be overcome.
So here's the frustrating part about it is early in the year when Nick Chubb wouldn't be in on a play where you would have thought he would have, there were actually times defenses called timeouts or had to make major changes based on the personnel that was brought out on the field on an important 4th and 2 or a 3rd and 4 or something like that. Then by the end of the year, teams had scouted it so well they already knew that Nick Chubb wasn't going to be on the field. So on this crucial down, I don't need an extra lineman. I can get another speedy guy in there to chase somebody down.
Which means you've lost the advantage that they're trying to get.
Exactly. 100% correct. It doesn't make sense. It's both a travesty and a tragedy.
And this isn't fucking expert deep diving shit, man. You guys watch the games. We watch the games. We see this. You see it. Everybody seems to be talking about it. Why doesn't this organization seem to be able to understand that that's a problem?
I mean, the answer, as disgusting as it is because DePodesta says so.
How can Jimmy Haslam in like week 10, have they just banned him from the facilities during the year? Like, is he just not allowed to do anything?
I don't know. No, I'm sure he's like.
How does he not just like it's a Wednesday. Hey Kevin, why isn't Nick Chubb on the field for fourth downs? Why does he not seem to be on the field for these big plays? That's a question that as the owner of the Cleveland Browns, I would want to know.
I think he already knows the answer to the question, which is DePodesta's analytics say we have a better chance without Nick Chubb on the field, which then I agree with you means your system is broken.
Oh my God. That Kareem Hunt's going to be gone, which they didn't use him. They get a compensatory pick for him, which I guess will be better than what they could have gotten if they traded him. But, I mean, is Felton any good? I don't know. He never plays. He looks like he should be good.
Yeah, no, I think Felton and Ford will both get chances next year.
Okay. I look forward to seeing them get chances because I think they can play, and I don't understand why all these guys are on this roster when they're in win-now mode. And we haven't even mentioned Dearness Johnson, who had like 12 carries this year.
Is he still, like, do we still have a hold of him? Is he still part of the roster?
I don't know what his I don't know what his status is. He might
neither.
be like Tyler Huntley, where they might have another year of control on him.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And they're just waiting for a trade, and maybe they execute that trade this year. It seems like his value would be significantly lower than it was last year.
Yeah, I would think so. I would hope he would still get a chance, but I think Ford and Felton fit better into that Kareem Hunt role, and hopefully this means they won't take 14 carries a game away from Nick Chubb. Like, I'm not necessarily saying you have to run it 40 times a game, but if you're going to run it 30 times, most of those carries should go to Nick Chubb.
Well, I mean, build your team differently then. Like, if you don't value 4-yard runs, why is your team built for 4-yard runs? Again, I'm just a guy, man. I'm just a guy that watches the football games. And I'm asking the same questions a lot of you are thinking, which is, why are all of these guys that are so fucking smart doing things that are so fucking stupid?
Because they don't think it's stupid.
Oh my God, I know they're smarter than everybody, which is why they got Deshaun Watson, who let's wrap it up and be quick with Watson. We talked about it during the last 6 weeks. He looked fidgety in the pocket. If you're hoping for a drama-free offseason with Watson, good luck, because they're going to pick up those 2 remaining civil suits. I think that gets picked up in March, so that'll be a nice lead-in to the draft for everybody. It's just the circus will be back in town at least for a little while, but, man, they traded 6 picks for him. 3 of them were firsts. I didn't see anything other than those 3 passes he threw against the Commanders, and I wasn't even really all that impressed with those. What do they have to do to get him able to complete downfield passing? Because that's what he was brought in here to do. That's what his strength is. Is it as simple as just getting a speedster at wide receiver, or do they need to change? Do they need to change the whole system and how they're built on offense? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I think part one of it is it doesn't matter if Deshaun Watson can't be Deshaun Watson. So the way I would look at it right now, even if Deshaun Watson could still get back to his absolute peak prime, which actually might have been the year before that he won the passing title.
When he had Hopkins.
Like, so you've got that, but kudos if there's any listeners here from our Browns group on Facebook. We get into a lot of cool discussions in that group, and somebody said, I mean, it's probably pretty hard to start playing football again after not playing football for 2 years. Like, it's probably pretty hard, right?
And you just got $250 million guaranteed.
Yeah, and so it's hard to believe he's going to be able to get back to that peak. But even if he does, let's say he gets back to peak Deshaun Watson. He's what, the 8th best quarterback in the AFC? 7th? Can I run through him real quick? Right? You've got...
Well, let's start at the top. You've got Mahomes, Burrow,
yeah,
Allen.
yeah.
And then Herbert,
Lamar.
Yeah. I'd put him like right there with Lamar.
You think he's right there with Lamar? So
Because he can run a little, he can throw. His throwing compared to Lamar's throwing is a wash with how much better Lamar is for running. Because I think Watson does make some plays with his feet. I hear about it a lot because that seems to be the only way he makes plays right now. There's not a lot of consistency. He looks fidgety. I'm hearing about, now we're talking about whether or not the O-line is built for the quarterback. Jimmy, they traded 6 fucking picks for the guy, and we don't know if the O-line's built for our quarterback. What the fuck is going on? Why? Like, are we in fucking Groundhog's Day?
No, it's not Groundhog's Day. I just think it's 3 guys with Ivy League educations who think they're smarter than everybody else, and there's nobody in the room to tell them. They don't have a Greg Williams or a Bob Wiley in the room to tell them to hold the fuck on. You're not the first to do this. You're not the first person to think he's smart at football.
Like, yeah, I know you guys don't know football, guys, so you think no dumbass football guy could think of this, but we've thought of it. In fact, it was thought of like 10 years ago.
Yeah, so there's nobody like that in the room to make them realize they're doing anything wrong. Because
you know what? It's just they're wiping it clean, and you're going to hear about new beginnings, and it's going to be it's going to be an off season of just wipe the slate clean, and it's, go from broke next year, all or nothing. That's what it's going to be.
Right, but the thing that's frustrating is...
Well, except for Deshaun Watson, who's got a guaranteed deal for the next 4 seasons.
Yeah, but that's the part that's frustrating is, we heard from all of the local Browns media while Watson was allowed to be in the facilities before the season and right when he came back. Everybody was telling us how hard he was working and how good he looked. Well, how come that didn't translate to the field? And is it because of that he doesn't have that Superman quality anymore? Can he not do that stuff anymore? Because you haven't tried to do it for 2 years and you forgot what it feels like when TJ Watt hits you? Like,
yeah,
is that a possibility?
I mean, it sounds terrible. Getting hit by TJ Watt just doesn't sound like a lot of fun at all.
Yeah.
It's cold. You're getting beat up. But I'll tell you what he wasn't doing, Jimmy. He wasn't watching game film of DBs. He didn't seem to understand some basic things in pass coverage. And I'm not a genius in pass coverage by any means, but when I see guys who do film breakdown on YouTube who are really good, consistently showing how when he's missing throws or he's throwing interceptions, how he's just not reading the defense correctly, that is worrisome.
Right, and like I said, I think that kind of rolls back to what we were talking about earlier. I think he's having to look at defenses in a way he's never had to look at them before. Because you went from Nuke to Brandon Cooks. There was always that top tier wide receiver to take the top off and take away a defender, to have somebody's attention wherever they're going on the field. There is one defensive back going with them. And he doesn't have that right now because Amari Cooper doesn't garner that kind of respect. You can scheme Amari Cooper out of a lot of situations. Now, we also saw it bite the Commanders. We saw the Commanders leave that cornerback one-on-one with him. And I
think that team kind of gave up.
Yeah,
they realized they weren't winning with Wentz.
Yeah, but absolutely. But I think there are times it's going to backfire on defenses, but for the most part, defenses are going to play zone against Deshaun Watson until he shows he can understand what to do with that extra guy in the box, unless they draft that burner who can actually catch footballs.
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to that. I think Deshaun, he always seemed to have a good football IQ, but you haven't done this. You haven't been in a game for 2 years. How quick is that going to come back to you? How quick are the instincts going to be there? And you are looking at something completely different. You've never really played very many games with that extra safety in the box where they're playing him, where the interceptions happen too.
That's probably as good a place to wrap it up as any, because we've done this before. So if they're not going to get time to figure it out. I mean, I said before, if they're 2-6, the fan pressure is going to be just enormous.
Yeah, I don't I hope for his sake those conversations have already been had with Stefanski or will be had with him by D. Podesta and Barry. Like, listen, man, we're providing you with all the tools we think you need to win, and if you can't win with them, then we may go in another direction next year.
I don't think they're adult enough and have the people skills to have that conversation. And also, I think they're just going to give him, they're like, I think it's wipe the slate, man. Like, all right, we didn't have the quarterback. You know, you showed you could make the playoffs with Baker. Now we've got you a real quarterback. Now you've got a full off season. But again, if they're 2-6, like they're gonna have to come out the gate and they're gonna have to play very well out of the gate because the fans are already losing their minds.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree with you. I absolutely think if the first half of the season next year doesn't go well, you will see whoever they get as defensive coordinator take over as head coach. I absolutely believe that.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Jimmy, thank you for making the drive up here. It's been a pleasure. It's always great talking sports in person.
Oh, absolutely, bro. No place I'd rather be.
And I want to thank all of you for listening. Please give us a like or subscribe to keep up on all of our latest podcasts. We will have our normal weekly picks podcast out later this week. The NFL playoffs have begun, and there are some matchups I was hoping wouldn't. Man, some of the bad quarterbacks are playing each other, man. I don't like that.
Yeah, dude, do we take Daniel Jones or do we take primetime Kirk Cousins?
These questions and more will be answered later this week on No Broken Legs.
Every action has a repercussion. Miracle bullets don't make